thing on the, not on the agenda, but I received paperwork from Sandy Hook out of Newtown, Connecticut for grades 3 through 12, which has, when you see something, say something in school, hopefully it was sent to all the 18, so you give it to the, and it's free information that's going to be distributed at no cost to us. The next item is my senator, Jeff Timberlake, has a deal where you can be an honorary page for grades 3 through high school. And if you wish to do it, all you have to do is contact his office. And the student would have information about what happens as a page. And also you might want to ask some questions, like where's the money? It's almost gone. The other item is, I was sitting down over the weekend, going through all the budget things that you have turned in so far. What's not there, and if you were running a house, you would say, wait a minute, I need to know what's happening in future years. So I don't need all the extra paperwork, but I do need for 20 to 21 and 21 to 22 paperwork saying how much money you think you're going to expend. So that when you're looking and sitting down with Jay and the budget gets cut, you have, wait a minute, if I wait that long, you're going to have a higher budget and you can't afford it. But people on fixed income can't have a high year and a low year and a high year. Let's see if we can't get this thing squared away. Doing 1 year budget is not the way to go, because I sat down and I said, well, if I eliminate that and move it over here to the, but I don't know what the next year is. I can't tell where that money is going to be spent. It's the only way you run a business. Business runs on 5 years. I'm asking for 2 more years of data, but not all the backup data. I don't want all that. I just want general terms and the amount of money so we could see. So when somebody says you got to cut something out of the budget, wait a minute, that's going to hurt you back here because you got too many other items coming up to hit you. That's all I ask. So with that, any adjustments to the board or superintendent?
I do. I wonder, and I'm not sure if this is the way to do this, but I wonder if I'd like to make a motion that we look at item 5F, which is discussing Dr. Carr's letter about restructuring schools and looking at that, and table that until after we can form a committee to get some more information and gather some research and gather some community input to look at possibilities. I don't want to stop the conversation. I just want to wait until we have more information to have the conversation, because I don't know what your experience has been like recently, but I've been getting a lot of calls from people saying, what, you're closing my school? And like there's all kinds of there's all kinds of information happening, flying around that isn't what's happening. And I think that in order to be proactive and good representatives for our peeps, we should get some more information before we
We're going to have a discussion tonight, and the reason for the discussion is it's going to start the idea of the committee. So people need to have an idea. No school is being closed.
I understand that. I'm just making a motion that we don't even discuss it until after budget season is over, and so whatever that means, April or May. So I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, but can I make a motion to change the agenda during this time? Okay, so if somebody wants to second it, you can.
I second it. We need to discuss it and then vote so we can move on or not.
So the motion is, I just want to understand and make sure everybody understands. So you're making a motion to basically table the discussion of 5F for this evening? And then we got a second from David on that. Am I understanding the motion correctly? Okay.
And my discussion is that if we don't have a form, so that we open up the discussion, to know what people we want on the committee and what type of people from the committee, because the community has to be part of this, totally part of it.
Agreed.
And they need to hear what's going on and what's being offered. So I'm not in favor of the motion. Any other discussion?
I'm not suggesting not talking about it, I'm just suggesting waiting a little while, because we got a lot on the table right now.
No, we're going to have a discussion tonight. It's on the agenda. It was put there for a purpose.
Okay. Well, we had a motion and it was.
Anybody in favor of this motion?
Okay.
Three.
4. Crystal's hand is up. So there's 4. So Betty, Sean.
All opposed?
And Crystal. 2, 3, 5, 6.
Abstain.
And 1 abstention. 2 abstentions.
Okay, moving forward. Any other next items?
Could we move the discussion regarding proficiency-based education above F?
Yes. It will be done.
Can I ask why?
Just so we could get the proficiency-based education discussion over with, move forward.
To move something, we should have a motion.
Okay. I make a motion, we move item 5G above 5F.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Wait.
Go ahead.
Just a note, not for or against it, but to me, they're both important things, so they're both liable to involve discussion and careful consideration. So one way or the other is irrelevant to me.
Okay.
All in favor of the motion? Raise your hand.
3, 4, 5. Crystal, your hand was up. right?
Yep.
Okay, just making sure.
Opposed?
3, and then abstention.
So I had 5 in favor, is that correct?
Yep.
5 and 3.
5 and 3.
Abstentions.
Abstentions?
And 3 abstentions.
Who was the second opposed, I'm sorry? And Sean, and who was the second person that opposed that?
There were 3 that opposed.
Betty?
Motion passed. Moving on.
Gary, while we're making motions to change the agenda, I'd like to make a motion that we table 5H until a further meeting. I feel like that's another thing that we really need to discuss in more detail, and I feel like I need more time to look at that, and I have a lot of questions, so I'd like to have that discussion at a different meeting.
Second.
Anybody opposed? Any other discussion? You don't want to open it up just to hear what's going on?
For the 5, for the,
And we could still bring it up at the next meeting.
well, as long as, I don't mind discussing it, I just don't want to have to vote to accept or
No, we're not
not
gonna
accept
do
it. And
that.
I just, because of this agenda.
Right.
There's some pretty
That's fine.
important things on the agenda, and I don't want it to just get pushed
How about if we just
aside.
add it to the next agenda?
I would love to do that, thank you.
That's a better motion. isn't
Okay,
it?
I'll change, I don't know what to do with my
Change your
motion now.
Change your motion on that one.
Okay, so I'll rescind the motion and make another motion that we remove the word vote.
Does the second accept that change?
Oh, who did the second? Sorry, do we have to
I'm not the
vote?
second,
Well, when you rescind, then it's
Okay.
off the
Oh,
table.
okay.
so.
So I'd like to make a motion that we strike the word vote from 5H for tonight and put that on a future agenda.
Cool.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Moving on. Pass. Okay, budget workshop, operations and maintenance. Sean, do you understand what I asked for tonight?
I did.
Thank you. I wanted that at the next meeting.
You've told me that many times, so I got it. Okay, so this is the budget. I'm sure you've all got a copy. So I'm just gonna go down through, starting with Manchester. And we'll go right down through each school. On Manchester, we've got the $5,000 for painting, which we do every year. The new fire panel box was $4,000. That's the second half of the upgrade that we did last year. And that's an Oak Point recommendation also. I got $3,500 in for parking lot, coal patch and crack fill. And that's one of the schools that we're not doing any tiring or anything on the bond. I've got $29,500 for roof replacement. It has two little sections of roof that need to be redone. It's not a restore, it's an actual replace. It's time. We've got $7,200 in there for a sump pump with an oil leak detection. Oh. Sorry. Yep. So we got $7,200 for sump pump oil leak detection. This may change with the boilers. If they go propane, I won't need the oil leak detection on the sump pump, so it'd just be a normal. So that'd be quite a savings, but without them engineered, I'm not sure what we're gonna do yet. So I have that in there. And I got $2,000 for the gardens, which the total was $51,200 for Manchester. Any questions on Manchester? So we'll move on to Mount Vernon. $5,000 for painting, we do every year. We've got doorknob replacement, that's an Oak Point recommendation for $5,200. It sounds like a lot of money. The doorknobs are very expensive, very, very expensive.
It gives a handle on the inside and a knob on the other side.
Right, the knobs are gone, it's a hand, it's a lever on both
Handles
sides.
on both sides.
The sprinkler fill alarm is $3,000. Right now, we have a sprinkler tank that's outside, and when we go to fill it, we have to look at it manually. It's been, the stuff is all there to hook it up, but it's just never been wired. So I want to get that hooked up so that when we want to fill it, we know it's full. I got $1,000 in replacements of receptacles, which is an Oak Point recommendation. $2,000 for chips from the playground. We go through a lot of chips up there at Mount Vernon. And $3,000 for gardens. We've never done the gardens up there. They're pretty bad. So that's all on Mount Vernon, come to $19,200. Any questions on Mount Vernon? Yep.
Could you review for me, I should know, but a no point recommendation, what does that?
It's when we had them come and do our facilities on the first year, second year, third year. And this is one of their things on the first year was to do that for, it's a,
It's a child safe thing.
yes, there we go.
Thank you. Thank you.
So going on to Reed Field, painting is $5,000, we do every year. We had a new fire panel box up there, so we'd like to do the second half of that one. And that was $7,000. That was an Oak Point recommendation. We need some fence repair done up there. Our fence is really bad, so I'd like to fix the fence at $3,500. I have in there for 2 unit ventilators. They're very expensive. They're $30,000 for 2. One wing in Reedfield Elementary has very, very old unit ventilators. We've actually lost a part on one this year. You can't get them. So I had a spare one here. We made some brackets and stuff and made it work. But so I'd like to start upgrading those unit ventilators at Reed Field. Electrical receptacles is $1,000. That was an Oak Point recommendation. Panel box identification is $3,000. The panel boxes up there are old. They've been swapped and changed, and they've moved the wires, so when you flick a switch that you think says this outlet, it's not that outlet. So I'd like to have an electrician come in and upgrade that so we know what we're pulling when we pull the power. And I have 3 panel box. No, and the doorknob replacement there was an Oak Point, and that's $7,800 also. For Reed Field of a total of $57,300. Any questions on Reed Field?
well, it's already on. I know you had mentioned in a prior meeting that there was issues because of the toilets and the water and the water, is all that
That has
taken care
been
of now?
straightened out. We replaced the toilets. We have not had any
You
issues.
had not any issues, so
Yeah.
they flush properly? and all
Yeah,
the
right
above?
now it's been good. It was a toilet issue. like
Yep,
we
no,
thought.
that's great
Yep.
to hear. I just wanted to make sure it was fixed.
Yep. Going on to Wayne, we got 7,000 for painting. Last year was 5,000, and the painter asked if we could jump it up a little bit because we've done some rot repair on the outside, so he'd like to fix those areas too. So we're up to 7,000 on the painting at Wayne. Electrical receptacles, that was an Oak Point recommendation. They have a lot of receptacles that need to be replaced. And they have a branch panel board that needs to be replaced, which is just a big electrical panel box. It's old, it's outdated, you can't get breakers for it no more. And that was an Oak Point recommendation also. I want to repair some more rot on the outside at Wayne for $5,000. And $2,000 for the gardens down there. And I've never touched the Wayne gardens either. They haven't been touched for a long time. For a total of $23,000.
So when I was in Wayne yesterday, your mole is back on the top.
The what
and
now?
On the top of the boards.
Yep.
But what's causing that, I took a real close look. You know the vent that goes up, it takes the heat up and the cold air up to the roof?
Roof, attic vents, yeah.
It's totally blocked over on the other side, on the, where the office is.
I'll check that out.
So when you do the
Is it
painting.
blocked with snow, you mean, or
Huh?
blocked with snow, or is it?
No, it's, that, the same mole that's on the top
Yeah,
is on that bottom piece, that vent that goes all the way underneath the eaves.
oh, okay, I'll check that out.
So what I'm saying to you is when they do the painting, they're gonna have to
Take it down,
take that whole that board down, clean that whole thing out in there.
yeah,
Otherwise, you're just gonna be wasting the paint job.
right. And I have plans on pressure washing down there too, so that will help the siding and
Yeah,
stuff.
but you're gonna have to do more than that
Oh, yes,
to clear that out.
yep. Any other questions? So the middle school, we've got painting for $5,000. I've got $2,500 for 3 40-yard dumpsters. That is for the basement. It's a collect-all from every school in the district. And we clean it out every year, and it's filled up every year. And then I ask everybody what they want to keep, what they don't want to keep, and what they don't want to keep, we throw. And there's a lot of stuff in there that still needs to be thrown out. I've got $5,000 for valves. These are heat valves in the classrooms. We've been losing 4 or 5 every year. It's that time of year, the school's getting older, they're starting to go, and I'm just trying to keep ahead of them. The electrical receptacles is $1,000. That was an Oak Point recommendation. $2,500 to wax the gym floor. I have in there the $30,000 for the new stairs on the back of the school. And when I put that in there, at that time, I didn't know if Ryan was talking about doing a new program, wasn't sure if it was gonna go in that school or not. I mean, so it's in there.
So if he puts the program in the high school, you won't need that.
We don't need the stairs. It would be nice to have them, because kids do run from the high school down to the middle school. They do not come to the front. They'll try to run down that hill. One of these times, I'm scared some kid's gonna get hurt. I do have signs up saying not to do it, but that don't matter. They do it anyways. I have $84,000 for a roof restore. It's due. The roof does not leak. We have not had no issues with the roof leaking, but the seams are getting to the point that they need to be restored. So I have that in there. It is due. We have a 3-year plan for the roofs with G&E Roofing, and this is the year for that to be done. I have $1,000 for the gardens, and I have $2,000 to grade around the building to bring the ground back up to grade around the middle school, for a total of $133,000. Any questions on the middle school? Okay.
That's an older copy.
Okay, so I'll go on to the high school. So I've got $5,000 for painting at the high school that we do every year. I've got $32,000 for 2 new unit ventilators here at the high school. We changed 2 last year, and I'd like to keep so many each year so that then we're not into this thing 5 years down the road, we need to replace them all.
When you brought this down.
I got some panel box identification here also, that we got some old panel boxes that I need to have an electrician come in and find out where these switches go, because when we pull power, it's not pulling what it's saying that it's pulling. I've got $38,255 for the hallway rugs. We replaced 3 sections last year in the high school, and I'd like to replace the last 3, so it's completely done. 1 section definitely has to be done for a tripping hazard, but I'd like to be able to replace all of them, and then the school's done. I got $1,000 in electrical receptacles, which is an Oak Point. I've got $30,000 for lockers, and that's not all of them, that's just to do a few sections of the lockers. I know you guys have seen the lockers, they're in bad shape, but I have that in there. $2,500 for the gym floor. I got $16,000 for air conditioning units in our computer labs. Right now we have box units in the wall. They don't work good. I'd like to put in the heat pump air conditioners. We do get a efficiency main rebate, and I think it was $2,000, so we'd drop it down to $14,000. Fire panels, $6,000 here. That's the second half of the upgrade that they did last year. I've got $11,000 for a keyless entry system here. And the reason I put this in here is we get called every weekend, 3 or 4 times, 2 times. I've been called up to 5 times in one weekend because people come in and set the alarms off. And then they run. They don't stick around. So with this keyless entry system, if somebody comes in, sets the alarm off, it's going to say who set the alarm off and who did it. I have a lot of keys out that I never get back, and I don't know where they go. So there's people outside of this, people that work here that have keys that come in here. And we've seen people in the school that don't even have nothing. They're not coaches or they're not people that work here. So I'd like to have a keyless entry system. And then I've got a big one, $105,000 for bleachers. Everybody knows the bleachers are old here. And that's to do both sides. That's both sides of the gym. That's all of them with the logo, the whole 9 yards. It has, it's what do you call it? ADA compliant, got railing, stairs, all that. Very nice bleachers. And also they come out with just a push of a button. It don't take 3 people to pull one section out like it does now. We got a switchboard that needs to replace, it's a support for it, it's $1,000. That was an Oak Point recommendation. And then I've got $7,500 in for the day treatment room, which that's a new class that Ryan will may be having. And that is to add a room in the library and to fix up the room that Ryan would be using. So that was a total of $258,255, which is a lot of money. I understand, but I just wanted to put everything out there for you guys to understand why I put it in there. Any questions on the high school? Yep.
Interested in the bleachers.
Yep.
I know a new set costs $105,000. Is there anything else that we can do for the bleachers to make them safer and more accessible for people?
The bleachers that we have, no.
No,
No.
nothing?
They are safe. We have them inspected every year, but to be ADA compliant, we can put some handrails, but we won't have the aisle that would go up through for people to walk
Right,
up
to
into
walk
them.
up.
You'd still have to step on each step. And there's no cutouts for like a wheelchair person
Right.
would like to come in. You can't disfigure what we have there. Yeah.
Okay.
In Reed Field, they just put in new bleachers at the ball field, and they got a grant from AARP. Have you looked into anything?
I have not, no, I haven't.
Maybe that's something I don't know who would do it in the administration, but if there's a way to get a grant for some of this, that'd be
Okay.
awesome.
Might there be a model of the bleachers that are not necessarily electric, that may be less expensive, but still meets?
That style, the new style bleachers, they're all
electric.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's no more pulling. Like I said, we pull each section, it takes 3 of us to pull them all.
Sure.
Yeah.
How old are the bleachers?
Bridget?
They're the original bleachers when the school was built in 1976.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go on to transportation, over to the bus garage. I got 3,000 for grading the parking lot, out front and out back. I've got 5,000 for the painting. There's a little, I have a $1,500 for the deck. It's what the bus drivers use for their office. There's a little deck out front, it's in need of repair. I got $1,000 for new smoke detectors, which was an Oak Point recommendation in the garage. $2,500 for emergency lighting in the garage. And $2,700 for new receptacles. The receptacles in the garage aren't up to code. And that was an Oak Point. And that was a total of $15,700 at the garage, bus garage. Any questions?
Quick question about the painting that's throughout this whole thing.
Yep.
I know, like, we looked at bids for snow plowing and stuff like that. I'm assuming the bids come during the summer for painting?
I actually haven't put that out for bid.
We don't put it out for bid,
No, I haven't.
but it says contractor. Just because I don't know.
It is a contracted service, but we've been using the same person for many, many years. He gives us a very good price.
Any other questions? Okay, so I'll go on to the central office. I've put in 21,000 for air conditioning at the central office. That's for 3 heat pumps. Right now, we put, I call them window shakers, in the windows in each one of the offices. They're very inefficient, very noisy. So I put in for that, and I put in $1,000 for their flower gardens, for a total of 22,000. And them air conditioner units do have the heat in them also, which would be a plus for the central office, because they have radiant heat. And in the fall and in the spring, you're either hot or you're cold, because it takes so long to heat that cement up, and then when it does, it takes so long to cool it down. Those heat pumps would work good at that time of year for that also. Any questions on central office?
So I have another question. All these gardens that we have, I was in Manchester, and I don't know, around that town office somewhere, and they had little signs up, some garden club takes care of flowers. There's no garden clubs?
We don't have a garden club.
No, we don't, but does it, any of these towns have garden clubs?
Oh, I'm not sure. I've never heard of any. I wish we did.
So can we look into that?
So when you say that, who exactly am I contacting? The towns? I just don't know who to contact. Who
Neither,
I would
well,
talk
I
to.
would, if we asked our own towns, if there's garden clubs? I mean, Wayne has, a gentleman that, what's that, I can see it on the, old Winthrop Road. There's a big, something,
I think we do have a garden club, for that matter, so.
we do.
Yeah.
I wonder if we, in Wayne, I don't know, if you might want to ask your towns, if they have garden clubs in them? It might save Sean some money and time.
What Sean has in here is just for supplies. Mostly it's mulch and
Yeah.
Our people, our staff do the work. It's, most of this is supplies, so whether the garden club's doing it or we're doing it, it would save time for our staff, but I would imagine we would still be responsible for the supplies.
I don't think that's the way it works. You go into Lewiston, they have, their garden clubs come out.
When you're talking $1,000 for mulch, I can't imagine a garden club's going
All
to,
right,
but we can check it out.
We'll check it.
just an idea.
Yep.
Think outside the box once in a while.
Okay, so now I'll go on to my equipment list. Manchester Elementary, I have them down for a vacuum for $1,200. I have Reedfield Elementary down for a rug machine for $3,000. Wayne Elementary for a floor machine, which is $5,500. Wayne is the last school that has the old style floor machines that you actually have a cord running behind you. And it's so unsafe with the water on the floor. I mean, we use the GFI things, but I still don't like it. It's a very old machine. The high school I got in for electric pressure washer. We have a gas one here for our outside stuff, but we use the electric one in the summertime for in the kitchens. We do the hoods, the floors, gets the grease off the floors and stuff, and our electric one died last year. Central office I have for a new vacuum, and I have for our tool allowance again, so that we're trying to stock up on some tools for the maintenance department. So the whole total cost is $14,900. Any questions on that? And then I have, right now we have a 6-month lawn mowing person, and I'd like to add that, a 6-month custodian onto that person for a full-time position. And the total on that was $24,000 to add. I'd like this position to, like I said, they do lawn mowing in the summer for 6 months, and then I like it to be a spare custodian. My maintenance guy has been 4 months in the custodian position so far this school year. And if I had a spare, I could free up my maintenance person to do a lot more maintenance stuff. So that's why I have that in there. Any questions?
I just so I can, and, I mean, there are things that come to the board that we approve bids. How much of this contracted services stuff is put out to bid?
It's anything over $5,000 is supposed to go out to bid.
So I guess I would urge that definitely the painting, that if we're getting a good rate, we should win the bid anyways. But there's a crud load of stuff here that, and I don't remember.
And like the roof replacements, that stuff, the unit ventilators, we put that all out to bid, yeah.
I just, seeing the maintenance budgets in the past, I guess I've never gone back and actually seen that we've seen the bids as far as, and I'm sure that, I'm sure a lot of them happen over the summer, so I'm not saying that there's anything, I think it's all
The bids
above
are
board.
normally saw by Bridget, it's all the bids there. We don't, as a board, never see the bids.
No, but we approve them, right?
No, not all, no.
Just the ones that you have for, like, if we're selling a bus for $200, we're
Well,
approving
that's
that.
because, that's because we're getting money,
We're
we're
getting
selling
rid of it.
property. We're selling our property, and that's why you get that one, so, yeah. But usually for work,
Yeah,
those haven't usually come to the board.
I guess that just seems like quite a bit of money to, I guess, there's a paper trail but like some of these don't go out to bid.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess I guess if it is over $5,000,
Then it would go out to bid.
yes. But
And you should be able to see the paper trail.
Yes.
Come in and ask Bridget, and she'll show it to you.
okay.
Along those same lines, like all the electrical work, at one place it doesn't meet the threshold of $5,000, but district-wide it does. Do you get bids for that, or?
Well, that's one of my questions I was just gonna ask. We have an electrician that we use for our schools, knows our schools, knows everything. So what you would like me to do is everything that's over, like electrical stuff you wanna put out for bid. I just wanna make sure that I'm on the same page, because then I'm gonna get another electrician in here that doesn't even know our school.
Well, I guess we did it with plowing. We didn't give the bid to the person that came in the lowest bid this year, because you and the administration weren't confident that he could do the job. So full confidence in you guys.
Right.
I'm just saying, if it's year after year, and it's a sizable amount of money, I just think that we're trying to save nickel and diming over flower beds and stuff like that.
Right.
I just think that we should be able to say, we're getting the best bang for our buck right here, that's all.
Okay, so can you answer this question for me? On, like, Manchester Elementary is 5,000, do I have to put that out for bid because it's just for that school?
Well, and one of the things we'll have to think about when it comes to things like that is we can't put a bid out until the budget passes. That happens in June, so that going through a bid process of taking smaller amounts, putting them all together is gonna slow things down. We do have to kind of acknowledge that would happen, versus using like the same person that knows Manchester all the time. Not saying we can't, it's just food for thought that it does slow the process down in terms of getting the work done.
Sorry, I didn't know if you're done. I mean, I think if the policy, if it's over $5,000, I think we really got to be looking at it. I mean, I've sit here in meetings when we've told teachers in their classrooms you can't have books or you can't have a smart board. That's things that are practical. I'm not saying these things aren't practical to have nice buildings, but
Right,
I
okay.
mean,
No, that's,
I'm not going, I'm just, if we're.
and I looked at it
there's a
as
way to
where it
save
was
money.
5,000 for one school, I didn't know, I figured that was it for that school, I didn't know I had to add them all together.
I mean,
But
not
if,
doubting that, it probably is a good idea to have the same electrician who
Right.
knows the stuff, but
yeah,
when we're nickel and diming on things in these board meetings, $1,000 to $2,000, I've seen it, we're gonna cut that at $2,000. I think we need to be getting the best bang for our buck.
yeah, okay, yep,
Thank you, Sean.
okay, thank you.
Don't forget citizen computer.
Any other board questions? Citizens' comments regarding the budget only. Go ahead. Come up here, please. This is about the budget.
Yep. I'd like to make a comment regarding the bleachers. I'm a member of ABS, and I want to speak on behalf of ABS. We've had a lot of discussions around the importance of having safe bleachers for our community. My husband is the basketball coach, so I've been here for 19 years watching basketball games, and it is a source of pride for our community. There is a lot of people who come to the games. Our gyms are packed, and we do have a fairly significant amount of older people coming to the games. And if you come to the games and watch them try to get up and down the bleachers, we're helping people up and down, but the reality of it is a liability problem. I did a little quick math. I need to hold it back here. It looks like those bleachers have been here for 43 years, so they have served us very well. But I think it's pricey, but it's certainly an investment in our community. And I think that with wanting to build our community and have people involved in events, it is time to invest in safe bleachers that are suited for everyone and welcoming for all people to come to our gym.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys, just have a quick.
We've got a bid, yeah, that's what we've got.
Can you just, maybe this is a dumb question, but what's ABS? I apologize.
Awesome Bear Society.
Okay.
Sorry, we were all here, and then they went to go have their meeting tonight, and I said that I would represent the group, so, yes.
Since you're from the Awesome Bear, you must tell them that I thank them very much for all the contributions they make.
I will
Because
do
I
that.
look at them all the time. You guys do an excellent job.
Thank you. Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Go ahead. We're going to let the,
I move to approve the minutes of February 6th, 2019. Oh, wait, okay.
he's getting the list. It says-
Well, we had citizen comments.
Citizen comments now is for the things that are on the other part of the agenda. That
Yeah,
was a
but
citizen comment. for the
Somebody
public.
asked to talk when this item comes up.
All right,
That's what I want to do.
all right. Guess so. I don't know if you want to check in with all of them.
So,
to see if-
the citizens' comments, I'm going to allow to happen when the topic comes up. It makes it a lot easier, so you know what you're talking about, and hear what we have to say. Okay,
Gary, is there anybody that wants to talk about something that isn't that discussion? I'm just curious.
we asked that already.
Okay.
Go.
I moved to approve the minutes of February 6th, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any abstentions?
I move to accept the teacher resignation effective June 30th, 2019 of Patrick Ford.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm just curious, so what did he teach?
English. Yeah.
Thank you.
All in favor?
I move to accept the teacher resignation effective June 30th, 2019 of Susan Halberstadt.
Second.
Do we have a resignation letter?
It's on the back,
On the back.
in your folder.
Oh. Oh. Thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I move to accept the consideration of the out-of-state trip, field trip, Mount Vernon Grade 5 to Boston, Massachusetts.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
All right. I move that the resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize Issuance of General Obligation Bonds in Principal Amount of up to $5,843,710 to finance Marana-Cook Area Schools renovations and improvements project be adopted in form presented to this meeting, and that an attested copy of said resolution be filed with the minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, we got to sign a piece of paper? So that'll come around to us. So now we're up to discussion regarding proficiency-based education. So would the public like to wait until afterwards? So let's discuss proficiency education, based education.
So this is a request by the board, so I'm going to try to field questions and/or record questions based on the conversation. As you know, the state has, the last kind of directive that they gave out around proficiency-based education, specifically around the diploma proficiency-based education, is basically there's two tracks. One track is a proficiency-based diploma, and another one is a traditional track using the credit-based system. That is out there. The fact of the matter is Marana-Cook is actually in a dual system at this point, where, according to our own policy, where the students that are currently sophomores have proficiency-based diploma standard around math, English, science, and social studies. The freshman class would add those same four content areas, and then they would have a choice, the student would have the choice for the next one, and then it continues to roll forward until all content areas are put together or are all proficiency-based. That's our current policy. So,
What that, in terms, for me, that means that we are already in process of bringing proficiency-based into the system
yes,
entirely. And
absolutely,
we're partway through that.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You have a committee that you have convened
Yeah.
that's studying this issue?
Yes.
What has that committee come up with so far?
So at this point, we've had discussions around what our philosophy is around proficiency-based education. We are looking at some of the components that go into that. Like, what does our policy say? I'll be very honest in saying, I think for a teacher to have a student come into class and say, I want this class to be a proficiency class, but I'll use Bridget as my example. If Bridget says, I want this to be a traditionally scored class, now the teacher has to juggle two different systems. I think that's really hard on teachers. I think you have to, policy change-wise, I think you're gonna have to say, the next roll-in phase is, for example, the world languages, I'm just using that as an example, or it's health and PE, and you bring the subjects on as you move it forward, rather than giving the students choice.
Did that part of the law get changed or not?
No, it didn't get changed. About
the roll-in of subjects?
No, it's our choice how we kind of do that work, or how we choose to do that, if we're going with proficiency-based or not, so.
We have the choice of either saying proficiency-based or credit-based or dual.
Yes, yeah.
But the part of the law, do we still have to do proficiency-based education?
This is more of a diploma issue. It's
That's
more of
what
a
I
high
thought.
school issue.
And so when Governor LePage rolled back, said,
Yeah.
we don't have to do proficiency-based diplomas anymore, then all of those timelines, did they go away?
No, I think we have to follow the timeline that's in our current policy. So
But
that's
as state guidelines,
right, the state has kind of left that to us to continue the roll-in or not continue the roll-in. Yeah, it's a good question. I'll let the board chair.
Go ahead, Pat.
Jay, in this committee, it's a K-12 committee, correct?
At this point, it was middle school, high school.
Okay.
I have middle school and high school teachers as well as the administrators on it.
And I'm trying to remember without notes in front of me from the last curriculum committee meeting, where you and Nancy Harriman talked about this a little bit, and talked about how a discussion was going to come about looking at what our philosophy as a
Yes.
district would be about, what proficiency
Yes.
means, and separating that
Yes.
from grading system, from diploma, from recording
Right.
system.
Absolutely.
Where are things with?
So we've
all
had
that?
three, at this point, I believe it's 3 full meetings. We're meeting about every 2 weeks right now. So we're still very much in the beginning phases. And the last meeting, we had specific discussions around what does this mean for sophomores? How do we make sure when they get to senior year and graduation, how do we make sure we have the necessary pieces in place? So that's kind of the conversation we last had. We kind of, I'll just share with you I put together some, what I call tenets around proficiency-based education, and I'll just rattle them off very quickly, and I know it's kind of in educational language, so I apologize if it kind of sounds a little foreign, but this is kind of what we kind of believe, and a lot of this is based on work that's already been done in the district. So basically, you have a curriculum that's guaranteed and viable, which in very simple terms means that all students have the necessary time to meet standards, and the amount of standards that you're looking to cover is something that can be covered in a year's time. We're not trying to put too much curriculum in. Another tenet is that students can see their progress and get supported as needed. Another tenet is that learners are engaged at their appropriate levels. So think of it as kind of your comfort zone, your learning zone, and what that means. So you're kind of looking at when can you help students, challenge students, and where do they need extra support, you need to back down a little bit. Feedback is given to enhance learning opportunities is another tenet, and that our final tenet would be that our learning environments help students develop agency. So that's ownership around their own learning, the purpose of their learning, being motivated to learn, being engaged, having a voice, having a choice, and being able to self-advocate. So that's kind of what proficiency is all about, versus a lot of the other conversation that's out there around grading practices or jump rope or things like that. That's two separate issues. And we kind of had that discussion at the committee level to try to say, okay, let's separate that out and make sure those two things don't get intertwined together and we lose the message behind what proficiency is really all about.
Well, it is all about our grading right now. Because I sit down and I look at transcripts from school for scholarships. This is the first year I got a 1 through 4 operation. And when you look at proficiency-based, I see this one person, whoever the individual is, senior, looking for a scholarship, had all 4s except for 3 classes. And she ended up with a 3.64 grade average. Now, if I was to rank her along with all the other people I had, that were all on A through F, she would have not got a scholarship. I looked at what she has done, what she has accomplished, and I moved her up, put her into the scholarship area. But I'm only one individual that can sit back and say, wait a minute, this isn't right, what she ended up with. But if you're going to talk about competition, when you allow a child to go out into the field, this is all part of this system. And you cannot separate them.
So I just want to be clear, what you're talking about was not a Marana Cook student.
No, it was an Oklahoma,
Yeah.
it was Omaha, Nebraska.
So that, I think, speaks to if I'm a college admissions officer or I'm someone that's working with scholarships, I'm getting different transcripts to begin with, whether it's proficiency-based or not. I'm getting different transcripts. If I'm in Maine or in Oklahoma or in Vermont, I'm getting a different transcript from 3 different states. And as a person that has to score it and make a decision, you're still having to do that.
I disagree with you totally.
Can I just say one thing about that? The, just having had a kid start college this year and do the whole scholarship, grades, everything, almost everything that he looked at in terms of individual colleges and what they received, and in terms of bigger organizations like the College Board, asked if he wanted to give his information in a 1, 2, 3, 4 way or in a traditional ABCD way with a GPA. I'm just telling you that was what was out there.
And on top of that, not every A it means the same thing from one school to another. An A can be 90 to 100, or it could be 93 to 100. So an A, you can't say an A is an A is an A. It's not. So colleges are looking at a lot of different things when they look at those grades.
So I guess my question goes back to, are we talking about proficiency-based education, or are we talking about proficiency-based diploma and grading? Because those are 2 very separate things. And I would like to know, I appreciate what your committee is doing, because I think it's really important that we hear from the teachers, how it impacts them and where they're at and what they see the future of PBE, proficiency-based education, being. So I would like to know what you're hoping from your committee for outcomes. What do you, like, when the committee's done or whatever, what are your outcomes?
Well, I'm hoping that we're going to come with some policy recommendations. I am hoping that we can have a discussion around grading, because I think grading, whether it's a traditional system or a 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of, there is a discussion that needs to happen around that. And through that discussion, that helps us decide what learning management system we're going to use, which then leads to the, how do we make sure transcripts at the, when students leave us, how do we make sure they're eligible for those scholarships and those other opportunities that we know everybody wants to have. But I think you've got your beginning conversation around your philosophy helps roll those things down. And you don't want to let a grading system, I like the way somebody said it, you don't want to let your grading system kind of be the tail that wags the dog, so to speak. So we know we have to figure that out. When you look across schools that are doing this, they're all faced with very similar discussion around how do we do this and make it so that our students don't suffer because of it. But it actually provides equity, because now we know there's a standard that every student who graduates from Maranacook has that standard. That we know they're getting this information, this mastery of this content moving forward. So I think that's really important.
So thank you for that. I just wanted to follow up and say, first of all, I think I've been working with proficiency-based education for many years. It is very complicated, and it's not something that we can just understand in an hour of a discussion. But I think that if you have proficiency-based education, you can have any kind of grading system that you want. Once you understand what proficiency-based education is, then I would say, as the teachers that are actually doing it, they can decide on a common grade. I mean, everybody should be doing it the same way, but I mean, it can be 1 through 100, it can be A, B, C, D, it can be 1, 2, 3, 4. The proficiency-based education part of it doesn't mean that you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4. You can decide however you want to grade it.
Alex?
So, this has been going on for how long?
It started. It started in
Well, mean learning results and the
right. It
all way
started
back.
before I retired,
It's been a
and
long
there
time.
were. I think it was performance-based education back then, but it was supposed to be started with the freshman class. I don't even remember.
Well,
But the dates kept getting, for the diploma, the dates kept getting rolled back, and then it became proficiency-based. But it was still basically the same thing.
So, I mean, the mandate was in 2012, correct?
Oh, before that, it was.
For proficiency diplomas.
That's when in my understanding, that's when the state finally understood what they wanted to say that districts had to do. And that's when they came up with, the mandate, you have to have the timeline, but the timeline didn't stay the same all through those years, so.
Right, and just recently, they removed it and gave the option to the schools. So, and the legislature has also proposed several laws to actually remove the legs of proficiency diplomas as well.
Mm-hmm.
But those haven't passed yet.
Yeah, it's
No.
just,
Those are in
the
committees.
proposals.
However, it seems to look like we're starting to move away from proficiency diplomas. That's my opinion.
We meaning,
Well, the state, I mean, the legislature. If they gave us the option, and they're also proposing laws that have not been passed yet, but there's a lot of circulation about removing proficiency diplomas entirely, I would start to think, well, if the DOE, if this ever happens, why would we continue to support something that has been slowly transitioned out?
Can I just,
Go
it
ahead.
sounds like, I'm not sure that I can answer like you guys can answer, but my understanding from being in the classroom and being there when the Common Core came and all of this stuff, the answer to your question is it's not only about graduation requirements and how you record and keep track of graduation requirements. It's about how an individual teacher looks at state standards in any content area and provides instruction in a way a kid can learn. That's the main thing that, in my head, that the whole thing's about. And then it translates then into being related to grading systems and graduation requirements, but that's not what the whole thing is about. So if a lot of people are rejecting proficiency-based diplomas, and we've seen lots of articles and things happening about that, and I don't know about those laws, but I was doing some reading in education journals like the ASCD one, that's whatever that is. Do you guys know what that stands for?
Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development.
And Education Leadership, Education Update, and something called the Great Schools Partnership, which I'm not really sure what that is, but all of these people are recommending, because I like to know what the national research is saying to sort of understand what might be a best plan for our little school. All of these people are saying we should have conversations about what works for each district regarding graduation requirements and grading, but the idea of using standards for teaching and learning is really good for students, and that's what we've always done. So I'm looking at your furrowed brow. I was trying to answer your question, but maybe.
Well, I mean, for me, so what was so bad about credit-based?
Not every,
Credit-based diplomas.
and I'm not going to speak in terms of Miranda Cook here. I'm kind of looking at a bigger picture. When you're looking at what is taught in that class, how it is taught, and what is the student achievement in that class, that's the discussion that happens around proficiency-based education. Those are the things you want to talk about. You don't want to talk about, did you get an A in class or not? That's not what it's about. It's about what did you learn, how did you learn it, and the evidence that goes along with that learning.
So, I mean, isn't this like associated? So, if a kid, for example, hands his work in late, doesn't that reflect in his how grade? Isn't that how it's kind of incorporated?
Yeah.
Okay. But then we just recently say that how grades are not going to be calculated into their 1 through 4
Where?
at the high school.
At the high school, yeah.
At the high school. So, if a kid hands in his assignment late, he gets a low how grade, but it doesn't reflect in his overall grade. Are we not
Okay,
penalizing kids?
so I'm going to ask you this question. Have you ever in your life, anywhere along the line, turned in something late and then been penalized for it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, was that right? Does that have to do with your learning? The work that you did, whether it's in on time or not, it's still the learning that you did, the work that you did. So you want to penalize a kid because he turned in something late, even though he may have 100 on that assignment?
Well, yeah, because as my understanding is, you're getting them ready for real life, and when my boss says something's due on a date, I better have it in. And so my understanding is that we're trying to cultivate them to learn to meet deadlines. Are we not?
Yes.
I mean, I go to college. If I hand in my, awesome
Oh,
essay,
yeah.
and I hand it in a month late,
I lose
he's going to
points.
give me a D or an F, and that's going to just yeah. I mean, that's real life. I can't hand in things late, and so it might be like perfect.
Sean?
Okay. I guess I'm a little confused about what we're going to be talking about tonight, because I thought I was coming here to learn what we were doing in our district. I mean, I understand the laws. We can decide as a board if we want to do proficiency-based diplomas or not. That was passed in the last legislature. I spent many hours of my life in those conversations with 2 senators in my caucus arguing over that. We can determine that. But I thought we were coming here tonight to learn what our district is currently doing and to me, we're in arguments here. I mean, to me, proficiency-based should be if a student is meeting a standard or not meeting a standard, and if they're meeting a standard, we should be moving that student on further in their education to help them move to another grade level. And that's how I look at it. If a student's in third grade, I'll use an example like my daughter, and she's already meeting third grade reading, we should have her in fourth grade reading or fifth grade reading. Or she's meeting the standards for math. But I don't know if that's necessarily happening right now. I'm not blaming anybody.
Right.
But I think that's what we should be. Or if there's a student who's meeting third grade, not have the kids in third grade sitting there because another student in the class is only at second grade, and that teacher needs to get that student up to third grade reading. That's kind of my understanding. But I thought I was coming here to learn what we're doing in the district and what was happening. So if that's not what we're doing tonight, I would like to have that added to an agenda for the next board meeting to hear from the principals and whoever's the lead on this committee. Because I did hear from teachers and parents. I heard from some teachers, I'm just gonna throw it out there, that said they weren't welcome on the committee because they don't necessarily agree with proficiency-based learning. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not looking for an answer for that tonight, but I think we need to hear from all views. And I hear from parents who love it. I'm kind of a believer in proficiency-based learning, if you haven't gathered that. But I've heard from parents who hate it. But I still don't know what we're doing in this district. So I'm a little frustrated.
Does Mr. D want to speak?
You need to go to the microphone, please, Mr. DeAngelis.
Thank you. So I'm Steve DeAngelis. I teach physics here, and I've been here since 1978, which makes me old but not crotchety. Okay? I want to establish that right off the bat. I still love my job and love teaching. All right. And I just had some perspective that I'm not sure the board was hearing. Sean, you were referencing something about the committee, but for me, I just felt that it would be worth my time to try to just give one teacher's perspective. And I want to make it really clear I'm talking about for myself, right? I think that there are other teachers who share that, but my view, but I think that I would want them to talk to you, and it's not like I'm the teacher representative here. But I do want to talk to you tonight about the way we have been working with the adoption of proficiency-based education in kind of an unfiltered way. So to start with, I'll tell you right off that standards I think are super important. I've taught using them as my guidelines from main learning results through Science for All Americans to the next generation science standards. Love them, think it's really important, okay? My view is that as a district, we've gone astray in recent years as we struggle to meet the state's ever-changing goal of proficiency-based diplomas and PBE. It's not about the names, by the way, okay? No matter what you call them, what we've been doing for the last 5 years, whatever you want to call it, here's been some of the results for us as teachers. First of all, teachers have spent an incredible amount of time over the last 5 years or so learning how to enter grades and standards into 2 different grading systems, Power School and Jump Rope. This would be time-consuming no matter what, but with constantly moving goals, we often end up doing something, then changing it as the targets change. Incredibly frustrating for teachers whose time is already really short. We're also trying to measure numerically everything we do with students. That means way more time for teachers aggregating and analyzing data. Now look, I'm a scientist, I love data, okay? But as a teacher of high school students, I am also 100% sure that this data gathering is not the most critical thing that I do with my students. We are being evaluated also using a complex system that basically uses a rubric to boil down everything we do to a final number. Above that number, we're all good. Below that number, and we're talking about an action plan. We're evaluated with a number, but that number doesn't do almost anything to help me become a better teacher.
Okay, so I'm just going to interrupt you for a second, and I apologize.
Go for it.
You're in the land of teacher evaluation system
I'll get out of it then, Jay.
Yeah, would you please?
Sure,
'Cause
absolutely.
I think that's a different conversation. Thank you, Mr.
Absolutely, I'll get out of it. Okay, here's the way I see this. Every minute I spend aggregating data, worrying about my evaluation, or juggling grading systems takes time away from these things. First, all the research says that the most important factor in student success in school is whether or not they have supportive relationships with their teachers. Number one. I know for sure that when I put my time into helping a student outside of class, listening to an advisee about their personal or family problems, connecting a student with an outside mentor because I know them well enough to know what they're passionate about, that's the best use of my time. In our PLC a couple of months ago with Kelsey Trefethen, we were talking about motivating students. We thought we should hear from students. So we invited 8 students to come in and tell us really open-ended question, what motivates you? Every single one of them said personal relationships. They told a story about some teacher that made a difference for them with personal relationship. Nobody said, oh, I was just so thrilled when I got that 4 on my last standardized assessment. That's what really matters the most. Our push for uniformity in how we teach is also exactly the opposite of what we should be doing with 3rd and 4th year high school students. Part of our evaluation system, and I think this is important, I won't go into the whole system, but is that we are supposed to start each day in the same way, with learning targets on the board for our students. This might work absolutely great at some levels. Some teachers love it. They should be able to do it. For me, teaching 3rd and 4th year high school students, getting them ready for college in a physics class, it's not the way to go. There's no question about it, all right? I graduated from high school with teachers who did exactly that, who wrote all the equations on the board. I could plug numbers in, crunch them like the best of them. Got all great SAT and achievement scores, went to a great engineering school and got hammered my first year as a freshman because I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. I could just crunch the numbers. I want my students to know how to think. That's number one. I know exactly what my learning targets are every day, but a better way to use them is to get my students to look at results of an experiment, a demo, or an intriguing problem and figure out what their observations mean. My job is to scaffold those experiences so they start with a connection to previous knowledge and then go further. Rather than shutting off thinking for students who do not need written targets, I monitor the class and individuals and privately or as a group give them only the guidance they need to move on. In other words, some students get more specific learning targets than others. I think it's important that our students learn to adapt to different teachers' expectations and teaching methods. Our students will go on to colleges. They will have bosses that are not identical. Their instructors in college are not going to be identical. Every boss will expect things differently. Businesses say all the time, what do they want? Number one, soft skills, right? That's the biggest thing. They want to be students who can get along with their peers, work well in a group, have the interpersonal relationships. That's what is most important to them. We need to allow our teachers the time to work with our students in a way to develop those skills. Okay? I'm already seeing one pronounced effect, by the way, of our current approach to proficiency-based education. And again, I am not opposed to PBE or to standards, just the way we're doing it right now. Because a very high percentage of my students this year, I have juniors mostly, came into class, the very first quiz, over half of them asked, as they were walking in to take the first quiz, when's the makeup? That's really discouraging to me. All right, because they are getting used to the idea already that they have as many times as they need to pass it. They didn't prepare. Right? They were just, and what winds up happening is, in the ideal world, you think, oh, they're going to just want to learn, so they'll go for it. But what happened is that I wanted to give them 3 or 4 makeups for some of them, right? And they just learned just what they needed because they knew exactly what that quiz was going to be, and that's where they focused. It's actually more of a focus on the grade, not less. Really disturbing, I thought. So my honors class, my 2 honors classes this year, I actually did a little experiment. First semester, I had let them do makeups for every quiz. Second semester, I said, guys, you're reaching a point, you guys are honors students, you're going on to college soon, you're going to go without a net for the rest of the year. All right? Told them this a month before their first quiz, no makeups. Their average grade on that first quiz, then on 15.6 points higher than any other quiz they took. They knew they had to do it. Students rise to meet the expectations you put on them. Right? In my college prep classes, for the first year this year, I decided to try what we've been asked to do, not grade homework at all. It works great in my 2 honors classes, worked really great in one of my CP classes. In 2 of them, without grades for homework, they would come in every day unprepared, which dramatically affected what we could do in class. I had to go back and reteach things that they should have already at least been exposed to in their homework. So second semester, I said, guys, for those 2 classes, the other 3 I'm not grading homework still, but I'm collecting homework. Started collecting homework. First quiz was last week. Both classes, 22 points higher on average on their first quiz because they're doing their work. I think that stuff super matters. Really, really matters. And again, I think right now it's too much for us about the grade, about the assessments, and about number crunching. Right? Give me the standards. Tell me what you want my students to learn. I love that. Give me as a professional the flexibility to figure out how I'm going to teach that to them. Because then I have the time to develop kick-ass, really good lessons. Okay? That's what excites my students. A teacher who they know has high standards for them and who supports them in their hard work I expect from them and who makes lessons so that they leave some classes going, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Right? That's the way I want it to be. I think I've said enough probably, but suffice it to say again, I'm only speaking for myself, but I know I'm not alone. I would just urge the board and administration to hear all the teachers on this issue before you make any final decision. You were right, it's a giant thing. It's really complicated, right? And it's a huge deal. But right now, my philosophy again is that relationships are number one. Good pedagogy is right there with it. And if you do those two things and show your students you love them, they will do anything for you. They will run through walls for you. We need to have that our focus. Okay, so thank you for listening. I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you.
Wendy?
How do we get there? High standards. Kids doing the work. Not just showing up and don't feel like working today, you don't work today. And have makeup quizzes and makeup quizzes and makeup quizzes and makeup quizzes. That's not how I learned. I had high standards. I was expected to come to class prepared. If the teacher said, we're doing this, boy, we did it. Pop quizzes, if you messed up on it, boy, you tried harder next time. I don't know how that's supposed to train kids for the real world, because that's not the real world. And 1, 2, 3, 4 does not equal A, B, C, D, F. There's no equivalency, and it's confusing. It's very confusing. I want kids to be held to high standards. I want teachers the flexibility to be able to teach and to do some amazing things in classes for our kids. That's what I want for our kids. I want them to be challenged. And that's it. That's what I want for our kids.
Go ahead, David. Thank you. I strongly agree, high standards is important. It's essential, and the process that supports the students to get there. You've got students at all different levels. I like what was said about, if you've got a third grader performing at second grade or at fourth grade, how do you support them? And to me, proficiency as a word means you're helping them be proficient at things. I was in a number of schools where I was graded 1 to 4, A to F. I'm sorry, businesses, our world has calculations. They can transfer 1 to 12, 1 to 4, A to F, and translate them back and forth. To me, it's separate. You want to go with A to F, we go A to F. You want to go 1 to 4, we go 1 to 4. And if you have the calculations right, someone that is getting 5 A's and 2 C's, or 5 1s and 2 2s, you can calculate, and as was said, the colleges, all over the country, people all over the world, people have to do that. We have to translate languages, and that's even harder sometimes. So I'm fine however we want to go with that, but however we're going, we still need to expect more from the students. Some of you have heard this before. I had to put my family through a major change that was financially and otherwise very hard, but we had to move districts because one district had low standards, and one of my children was way over them, and the only way we could get him to a system that had high standards but still supported everybody at all levels of performance was to move. So we did. Okay, thank you.
I just want to say that I think we're doing a little bit of a disservice to teachers in this district. We have very high standards in this district. The instructional practices that teachers are doing in the classrooms, they have high expectations, and this is an excellent district with excellent teachers, and I don't want anybody to think that, at least me personally, and I'm hoping we as a board aren't sitting here thinking that we're not holding our kids to high expectations. This district, and I work in many, many districts across the state, in this district, has one of the highest expectations of kids and teachers that I've come across yet. So I just want people to make sure that they understand that, me personally, I'm hoping the board are not saying that we don't have high expectations for our students, because we do.
I didn't mean that.
So Kathy, I don't think that's where we're headed. I think standards have to be high. And when we have grades after 5 years being on this proficiency idea at this low, we're not doing the job at all. We're way off track.
But I don't think that's because of proficiency-based education.
If proficiency worked, they should be able to pass this test.
I would disagree with that, but.
Well,
So just very quickly, what Mr. DeAngelis talked about, he's a good example of what proficiency-based education is all about. It's about working individually with students. It's about giving them feedback. It's setting high expectations and giving them very clear message on how to get where his vision is for that class. If you want to cloud that up with talking about, and one of the things that we wanted to do, one of the reasons why we've got this is we know that teachers working in two systems is hard. We know that. That is why we can't continue at a pace of expecting teachers to work in two different systems. That's one of the reasons why we formed this committee. And one of the things that bothers me, and I am going to address it now, Sean, and I apologize. One of the things that bothers me is that we're not having honest conversations about teaching and learning, about what Mr. DeAngelis just talked about the relationship with kids and about what they're learning. We're not having honest conversations. We're clouding it with things like a score. We're clouding it with things like, my teacher evaluation system has too many numbers and I don't want to do this and that. Those are things we don't control, you guys. We don't control those things. The state mandates what we need to do with the teacher evaluation system. We are doing everything in our power to roll that back as much as we can to not have it impact the teacher, but that takes time. That takes time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And our teachers, I'm going to go echo what Kathy just said, are working very, very hard. We can have a committee, and I can invite the middle school and the high school, and we are going to be having this discussion 3 years from now, you guys. Because all we're going to do is spin our wheels. We are going to have the same conversation 3 years from now. Because everybody, and Sean, you said this, everybody has an opinion about this. He's seen it argued at the legislature, you guys. So think about that. If we want to get to one system or the other, and what our towns are going to support, but we need to do what's best for our kids. And we want to get to a place that Sean described, where a student who may be showing proficiency in Algebra 1 and is ready to go to geometry or Algebra 2, and they don't have to sit in a classroom and do what everybody else is doing. They have a system to move on. Do we have that system built? No, we do not. We don't. We need to get there, though, because I personally think that's good for kids. And when you guys hired me, I said that. But it's going to take time because it's a very complex system. And the things we're grappling with around this table, in the middle school, in the high school, in the elementary school, every school that is doing proficiency-based education is grappling with these very same things. We are not alone. We are not in this by ourselves. We need to open ourselves up and have conversations with other schools that do have some of these things already done for us, that have already kind of figured these things out, that will help us solve some of these problems that we're looking at. But let's not cloud it with grades. We can develop a transcript that will get the students. I went to a meeting with Jump Rope today, with someone, a national person, and I asked them point blank, I said, okay, in jump rope, can you print out a transcript for us that shows proficiency? She looked at me, she said, no, I can't. You need to figure that out. That's the national person for the program. So what that says to me is, we have the opportunity to look at, what do we want our transcripts to look like? What do we want to show that shows our high expectations and the good work that happens here at Maranacook? But you've got, and I'm going to say this, you've got to let the administration and the teachers work through this. You can't just do what the state has done. The state backed off because it was a political nightmare. So they said, rather than the state have to make the decision and say, we're staying with this, they backed up and said, oh, it's your choice. And I'm not meaning to bash anyone at the state level here, okay? I'm not. But they backed off and they said, it's local control, you can make the choice now. That's what they did. And that's what's happened through this entire process with proficiency-based education. Every time we've looked for guidance from the state, they have changed their mind, they've rolled something back, and they just are kind of sitting back saying it's local control, it's local control. Philosophically, what do we stand for? All kids means all kids. And I'm going to go back to what Mr. DeAngelis, that is a perfect example. Regardless of how he grades in his classroom, that is proficiency-based education. That's building a relationship, that's making sure the students learn, that's setting high expectations, that's meeting the kids where they are and helping move them forward and setting those high standards for them. That's what it is. Regardless of how he grades, that's what proficiency is all about. Okay, so I'm getting off my soapbox now, but.
Carol, go ahead.
You go ahead. You can go ahead.
Carol or Cheryl? Which one? Oh, okay. I'm Cheryl Marvini. I wasn't planning on talking. I'm a teacher here at the high school in earth science. And first I have to say it's great that everybody's so impassioned about helping our students move forward and helping kids learn, because I think that's what we're all here about. Just some thoughts while I'm looking at this and sitting here. We all want the information in our classrooms to be better and the change to be there to help our students move forward into the 21st century that we're in. But it's very difficult as the teachers for the last 5 years. Our focus has been on assessment. As much as we want to separate proficiency-based, because the 20 years I've been here, we've always been standards-based. We've always worked on common assessments. We've always tried to have kid-centered classrooms. But the assessing of what the student learning is has been a large discussion in the last 4 to 5 years. And that's huge and takes a huge amount of time because it's on the teachers to do it. And it depends upon your subject area as to how much guidance and how much help you've had from the outside. So even though you say the assessment's different, I totally agree standards are awesome, but somehow we have to streamline that assessment piece for the kids, because the 10th graders and the 9th graders have a whole different system right now than the 11th and 12th graders. And as a 9th grade teacher, it kills me, because I want what's best for them, and I want them to be learning and feel good about it. And right now, we're in the middle of transition, and it's really hard. So it's really difficult to separate those two. Thank you.
So I'm here as a parent of 2 sophomores. So we will be the class with the diploma that's being decided right now. And I guess as a parent, we're all very nervous of the unknown, and we don't understand it, and we're nervous about what's coming and what the ramifications are. So there's not a law anymore demanding we do this diploma change, right?
That's right.
I just have a whole bunch of questions. And it's news to me that the sophomores right now have some subjects that are proficiency graded already.
Yeah, that's our policy. That's,
'Cause I don't
we
see
have
a
a graduation
difference.
policy that clearly defines
I did not know that. So right now, we are having proficiency-based teaching in the sophomore year, but we have GPA grading.
I don't know what you mean by GPA grading.
We have normal grading with A
You
through
you have a
Fs
dual system.
and a GPA.
You have a dual system right now, which means some classes are scored proficiency with the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have a traditional, here's a 7, you get an 85 in this class. And we've got to somehow, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, we've got to somehow rectify that so that when they get to graduation, those two things can be married together, because it sounds to me like you're talking about what is the student's GPA.
So when I look at college admissions,
Yep.
the University of Maine says they have to have a 3.22 GPA. They have to have a certain SAT score within a certain range to even be considered. Yes. When you go to their, let me finish. An SAT is a test.
Right.
If you don't have a good test taker, Lord help us. And I don't have, I have a special needs child who struggles every day. So I'm not fighting for my child that is going to go to some, Ivy League school or anything like that. I guess we're all nervous that if one child misses out on a scholarship or their application gets put on a back burner because they don't understand it and they don't go to a college of their dreams because we give a different diploma, that's unfortunate. If we can do proficiency-based teaching and don't have to change our diploma, I don't understand why we would. I called, reached out to a friend who teaches at the University of Maine, Augusta. She talked to somebody in admissions who said, I'm glad you asked because we're seeing this, the 7 different campuses all over Maine are seeing these admissions applications within the last several months. They had a meeting, all of them, like last fall, to see how are we going to deal with that. She said it is critical if you have a 1 through 4 diploma that there's some kind of key on that application that translates that 1 through 4 grade into the equivalent of a GPA. So we would have that as well, like some key that says this 4 is equal to this letter grade?
We would have a key that explains what our GPA means, absolutely.
Okay. Will the parents know that key?
That is something that should happen, yes. Do we have work to do? Absolutely.
Okay. Do we have any parents on your committee?
At this time, I do not, no.
Can we add some? So there's more transparency in us understanding what's coming?
Certainly can, but yeah, I'll say yes, we can. That's something that we can do.
And so I understand right now we have like the A through F, we have the house scores, and then we have the proficiency. So are house scores going away?
No.
Okay. So we're having proficiency in how?
So,
Going forward if this is adopted?
So I guess we've got to be careful when you say proficiency. If you're talking about the 4 content areas, they'll be ranked 1 through 4. That's what this district started, that path started before I got here. So that is something we need to work out. And then we have to look at the traditional score, traditional grades, and then we do have to find a way to marry those two together to be able to give colleges what they need. If that's what I think and correct me if I'm saying something wrong here, but I think that's what you're saying is, can we please get on this and get this figured out so I can make sure
That's not what I'm
my
saying at all.
children's-
I'm saying let's not do this kicking and screaming because it can cause some trouble. And if we do it, it has to be done right so students don't miss opportunities.
Absolutely.
And there's a clear understanding what our transcripts mean. It also sounds like if somebody's sitting in a classroom because they have to, that they shouldn't need to, sounds like a curriculum issue, not a proficiency issue. Don't they have to be, like you have to take this class before you get that class? That sounds to me like not a proficiency type of concept, but a curriculum concept, because you have to finish A before you can go on to B. Is that, I mean, are we even allowed to do what this concept is with our curriculum?
Yeah, we get to design our curriculum, yes.
Okay. Okay. Because it just sounds like there's always this pecking order of something you have to take before you take something else.
Yeah, that is how the system was built.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of the pending change, I don't know. And I don't know, I think it's just the unknown and the ramifications of it, that the parents are just up in arms. And this is coming and we had no idea. I mean, I guess we've been knowing for a long time. But if it's unclear where this direction is going, I don't see the rush. I don't see anybody pressing us to make this change. And this isn't a Maine thing. This is other states as well.
Yes, other states are doing, they're calling it competency-based education, but it's the same concept. Yes.
Okay,
Vermont, as an example, is doing this right now.
Okay, I just don't see that the need to change is overbalancing maybe some fallout. I don't know. We moved away for 3 years to the Midwest, and you guys have the most passionate teachers of anywhere. But I'm telling you what, the rigor in another school system, if you step out of this area, is mind-blowing, okay? Our students have to compete with other people from all over the country, all over the world, and we have to prepare them. They couldn't retake tests. There were tests in gym, for God's sakes, 20-question test on the rules of volleyball. And you don't retake things, and things are due when they're due. I've been in retail for many years, and if you did not meet your quota and you did not work at a certain rate, you did not keep your job for very long. So we do have to have them step up. We do have to have them meet standards. They do have to get the work done. They do have to have relationships. I have another daughter that if she doesn't want to do something, there's nothing that's going to make her. So relationships, I totally understand that. But I guess the parents are just nervous of what this means, and I don't know that we have all the answers yet. Thanks.
Thank you.
So how many times can a person take a test over?
I would have to talk to I mean, you're talking about different levels, so I guess, and my answer to that is, how many times did you take your driver's test over if you didn't pass? Is there anything so high stakes that you don't get a chance to take it over again?
Yes.
Name it, please.
Life.
Okay, that's very general, Melissa.
No, it isn't.
Well, I'll tell you right now. Okay, so personally, I am a procrastinator. I turn in everything absolutely late. Alex saw me do it through college. It affected my grades. I now have a real job in the real people world where I routinely turn things in late, and my boss does not like me because every week I have something due. Melissa, did you get this done? Oh, no, Bill, I didn't, because it doesn't matter. I wanted it this day at this time. Why wasn't it done?
So a school should be like that? You're saying that you want to put that much stress on
I
a
think there
student?
can be, I think it should be left up to the teachers. I would rather have Mr. D decide that this kid is just goofing off and not doing his work, or this kid is really having a hard time at home right now and needs a day or two.
Okay, fair enough, thank you, Melissa.
Personally.
Here, you've got.
Go ahead, Ed.
I feel like we're the tail wagging the dog here. I am completely, I don't know a speck of what our administration knows when it comes to education, and I don't, if there is, now that the proficiency-based diploma is gone, if I have full confidence that if our administration feels like we're going in the wrong way, they're not gonna just keep going. They will come to us with a recommendation to change our policy. I think that's what the board should wait for. I think we should have confidence in our administration that if there is something wrong, they will come to us with a recommendation. I don't see us being helpful as a board at all to create any divisiveness in our district when, I mean, are we thinking that we're going down the wrong path and just no one's saying anything? I mean, if there is something that they need to fix in a school policy, they'll come to us and they'll ask us to fix it. I think this is a weird discussion. It just seems like we're jumping ahead of when we actually need to have.
I agree. It's the administrators and teachers, and even, I mean, students need to have a say too, but the administrators and teachers need to wrestle with this idea. How are we going to do standards-based learning, and are we going to have a proficiency-based diploma or not? Because we have that option. We can, but we don't have to. But that's not our decision to make at this point, because no one has come to us with a recommendation. And we need to allow the conversations and the wrestling to occur at the administration's and teachers' level.
Go ahead, John.
Again, I'm going to say what I said before. I want to make it very clear. I'm a very big fan of proficiency-based education. I like to know what my child needs to know at the end of their grade level, and if they don't know it, or if at the parent-teacher conference, the teacher says they need help with this, as a parent, I feel, my wife and I feel, we have a responsibility to help our children get to where they need to be at the end of the year. We have one child that's very advanced, and she rolls, gets in a little trouble because she gets bored. I see Mr. Boston laughing. No. And I have another child that, you know, he struggles a little bit, and so we go to his teacher. So I think it's a good thing. But again, I'd like to hear, I still don't quite understand what we're doing in this district. I would love to hear from the principals on what's being done and what's not being done. I mean, we're kind of spinning our wheels on what people would like to happen in this district. I want to know what is happening in this district and how, when people call and say, well, this is what's going on at the school or not going on at the school, I can say, this is what I've been, this is what I've been told. This is my understanding. But I still don't feel I know what the heck's going on, what we've done to get to these goals. So again, I'm going to ask the question, can we please get an update on what's going on at the next board meeting or another board meeting and how we're going to get there? I have full confidence in all the principals and the folks on the A teams to get us this information, but I'd like to just know what's happening.
Go ahead.
Quick question.
Your name first?
Matthew Jones, sorry. I didn't sign up on there. Can somebody answer this idea of makeup tests, doing the homework multiple times, handing it in late? Is that part of proficiency-based?
That's
that a per
not
classroom?
part of proficiency-based. The idea behind that is that students take the time they need to learn the material. If students, the situation that Mr. DeAngelis described to me, students are coming in and saying, well, I didn't study, so when's the makeup? That is like a totally different issue. That is, and he set that bar, he addressed that issue with the students by saying there isn't going to be the makeup here, come in prepared. He defined that for them. So
it seems very new. It seems very new to me that this is like an ongoing trend.
Yeah.
First, I'll say, 20 years ago when I got married, still living in Massachusetts, I knew about Maranacook. And my wife and I knew we were going to move up here. My sister ended up getting a job here quite a while ago. So I'm 100% confident with what they do and so on. Having a senior graduating this year, having a sophomore and having a 7th grader right now, and seeing 3 different paths that they're all gonna be on is very disconcerting. So I share some of the concerns, obviously, that Carol has too. But I have one son that will come home, he'll have homework and he'll do it. And the other one, well, I can do it tomorrow, or I can do it tomorrow, or I can hand it in later. And I don't, so I'm not sure I understand, that's a per classroom and a per teacher decision, not anything to do with proficiency.
Right.
Okay.
That's not proficiency, saying a student making that decision. The idea is a student's making an honest effort to learn the material is not meeting the bar. So we're going to give them more support to be able to get to that bar that we have set. A student intentionally coming in and saying, well, I'm not gonna, when's the makeup? I didn't study last night. That doesn't have anything to do with proficiency.
Right, but if I try to put myself in my kid's situation, if I'm one that makes sure my homework's in all the time, and the kid that's handing it in late gets the same grade, how do I explain that to my kid when my expectation is you're gonna do your homework, you're gonna do it, you need to stop worrying about makeup tests and stuff. It's very confusing. It's very confusing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex?
So, we've been doing this for 6 years. My question is, do we want to continue allocating more time, resources, more effort to go down this path?
I think you still have to define that path.
I don't feel like that's our question to answer right now, because we have a policy that a committee of people is working on to bring us an answer to that question for discussion.
Well,
It's just
right,
not
but
answered
like,
yet.
Okay, so we do have a committee that is working on this. But at the same time, do we want to, how much more time do we want to give? Is 6 years not enough? I mean, my question is, how much more time?
Well,
Okay, make it short and we'll move on.
Well, I just want to respond to that. I don't think it's fair to say we've been working on this for 6 years. The department, maybe it has been worked on for 6 years, but there's been many, what's the word I want to use, curveballs thrown at this. The law has changed many times. The Department of Education has put out many different guidelines. I think people are getting, I think there's some caught up in proficiency-based education on what it really is, what it not is. There's been different things said on what it is. People have talked about proficiency-based diploma. I think jump rope even came up here. I heard that in some of the conversations I had about how horrible jump rope is, and teachers are forced to put their, I don't even understand all these things. But I think we need to hear what is really going on before we make any decisions.
So we're gonna let Dear Jay come up with a good definition for a change. And we're moving on. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. So the next item is this idea of schools, elementary schools, and how we save money on elementary schools. And so I wrote a letter, which,
I'm sorry, we'll talk about this, but what just happened? Are we going to, do we have a plan?
yeah,
So
we
is
have
the
a
plan that
plan.
the
He was
committee's
just
gonna
giving it to
report
Jay, that he's gonna
Okay.
come back to us before the end of the year, and have the proper definition of what proficiency really means.
And
And it meets and set the standards so that everybody around this table knows what the standards are.
And I will ask principals to come together and give a formal report of where they are according to the grade levels. I think that's a very, very fair request. And I think we can do that to make sure that happens within the next couple board meetings here, and then continue on with reporting out of where the policy, where my group is and what we need to do to include parents and kind of make sure that we have total buy-in, so.
Gary?
What's the problem?
It has been, it's been quite a few years in the making and getting to where we are now. And to say that the administrators need to come up with a decision by the end of the year, I mean, if they can do that, that's fine. But I would much rather that they put in a whole lot of thought into where they want to be. And if it takes longer than the end of this year, give us an update as to what the committee is doing. But don't tie their hands by saying by the end of the year, we've got to know this and this. So.
I would say we need to show progress. We need to show that we just have to end this ambiguity. It's costing parents, it's costing teachers. We just have to stop this ambiguity.
But at the state.
Well, the state just keeps making
State is
more
out
and
of
more
it,
mess.
they're not funding it, so Jay is gonna
Yeah,
take care of it.
But for many years, this was,
We're moving on.
yeah.
Okay.
So the next thing is elementary schools. I wrote a letter which allows parents to talk about that, and also, right. Tory. And so the idea behind that is that we have elementary schools, and not everybody in the elementary schools are receiving the same education. And so what I'm trying to do is equalize, admit that everybody has equal opportunity at all levels. And how do we achieve that? Because right now, we're not achieving that, in my estimation.
Gary, is it time to talk?
Go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank you for all the thought that you put into that letter, because it was very thoughtfully done. And I think that all of us need to understand that we're not making any kind of decision about this in any way, shape, or form right now. I think it's a great place to start a discussion, and I think that's what that letter was about. We do need to really think about, we've got a huge budget that was just presented to us. We've got lots of needs across the district. We're not having equality across the district for all students, exactly what you said. So we really need to have some conversations with a lot more people than are sitting around this table to really figure out where we want to go as a district. And we really need input from parents and community members to hear what you have to say. What are some ideas? I mean, this was one idea.
This is
You know,
only
it's
one.
one idea. There are a lot of other ideas out there. It's open to any thoughts and ideas, but I think the discussion is really important, and it's really important that people understand that we're not going to make any kind of decisions without lots and lots of discussion, lots and lots of conversations from teachers, parents from across the district, because we really are a district, and we need to work on this and figure it out as a district. That's all.
Very good. I agree with you. And that was, the other thing that was not written in the letter is that if you did decide to go for one school, you would have to wait a minimum of 10 years to be on a list, and then if the state blesses you, you get about 40% of that school. But then where that school is going to be, and that has not been decided. None of that has been decided. But that's way down the stream. What I was trying to do is correct what I see as this disparity that we have in our 4 towns, and to bring that everybody becomes part of a group, and they have ownership, and as they move as a team. And so that was the reason why that is. So one of the thoughts is that we start a group meeting of parents from each town, the select boards, whoever, and how we utilize our facilities so that we don't go out and spend $28 million and say, well, that wasn't worth it. I want to make sure that everybody moves ahead, so that when they hit the middle school, they're all at the same level. And the reason why I chose what I did is mainly because of my background in the economy and how you operate businesses. And this is a business that we're running here, and it's a high-dollar business.
So there is, before you get too far into your conversation, I did some digging into the history of the district, and I know Kathy was here for that, and Patty, you were probably here for it also, not as board members, but teacher and administrator, I believe. And so I just wanted to share it with the rest of the board so that you're kind of aware that this kind of initiative did happen before. In March of 2011, this initiative started, the similar initiative to this started, where there was a committee formed. It had 20 members on it. And there was one independent facilitator that ran it. So it wasn't like the superintendent or an administrator running it. It was an outside person that was helping to run it. They met through the course of March to September of 2011. They did, they looked at student counts. They did an enrollment study. The buildings were mapped. The teachers were counted, et cetera, et cetera. And the committee, that 20-person committee actually developed 14 different scenarios, which they then brought to the board in October 2011. And they recommended one scenario that involved some actual changing of the structures of the schools. They ran a public meeting in every town during the month of November and December of 2011. There was very high attendance. I have the sign-in sheets. There was extremely high attendance at every single town. There was several articles, which we have copies of at the central office from the Kennebec Journal. They developed a frequently asked question page that was actually 15 questions long that they handed out. They had to structure, I say they had to, they must have, as they began it, had a meeting ground rules developed on how people would talk with the board and such. They did those meetings, like I said, between November and December of 2011, and then in January 4 of 2012, the school board took a vote, and the vote was 3-10 against the restructuring that happened, and that was, that nobody on this board was here as a board member when that happened. You also turned over a superintendent at that time. I know it was a very contentious time, and that was, you know, I just kind of need to put that out there, that there was a superintendent turnover at that time. Then in October of 2014, and some of you were here for this, so I won't go through all of the details. There was a committee that was formed to look to move grade 5 to the middle school. Dr. Conway actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Conway was in charge of that committee. There was a lot of work that was done. There was a presentation that was given, and I've got a copy here, and of course we can get you copies if you'd like to see it. But bottom line was, based on the community responses around that move to grade 5, it was never, a recommendation wasn't even brought to the board, and the board never even took a vote. It kind of ended at that point. So I just want you guys to be aware that there have been a couple of these efforts to streamline a little bit. Times do change, things do happen, but I also think at the same time, you do need to know a little bit of the history that has already gone on before. So, you know, roughly 8 years ago, this same conversation happened. And you know what the results were at that point. Again, times change, you know, things are different, but if you want to start a committee up, I would recommend something that is similar to, let's form, it'll be a fairly large committee, and let's have somebody independently run that. Let's not expect myself or an administrator to run that. I think it needs to be done by somebody from the outside, just because of the amount of work that needs to happen there. And I think myself, I would want to be part of the conversation, not worried about the logistics of planning agendas and menu, you know, all that kind of stuff. So just something to think about, and I can provide copies if you want to see that for sure. It's just a very quick bulleted point of it, and we have 2 great big file folders down at the main office around just this restructuring effort that began in 2011. So take that as you will.
I just have a couple comments. The first one is, I'd like to echo what Mrs. Jacobs said. Thank you for the time that you put into this. There's a lot of information in this packet. I don't know about the rest of you, but if you'd been on the other end of my phone or my computer or any form of device that receives emails or texts or phone calls or whatever, you'd understand the weight that this letter can carry, especially if, you don't quite understand exactly what this is. It carries a lot of weight. At the top, it says RSU 38 board chair. That's what you are. However, I am going to suggest that next time something of this magnitude comes up, before it goes into a public document we know how things can spread, and we know how things can be received, and there was a lot of concerned, scared, upset, frustrated, angry people that I have talked to today, that this all could have been avoided by merely suggesting the starting of, like what Jay had said, looking at a committee, looking at starting something along that lines, and at a later time presenting or opening it up for suggestion. However, throwing in a suggestion of this caliber to a public document, I do not think is a good idea for future reference. Does that make sense to anybody? Okay. I'm just saying that this is pretty powerful, and if you read it, anything you read can be read any way you want it to be, and if you see it the way it is, it can scare the heck out of you, and it can cause a lot of unnecessary fire, and we're right in the middle of budget season, which is already hard enough, let alone adding anything extra. Thanks.
Go ahead, David.
Thank you. At the same time, we can, there may be question of how it was started, but we needed to start the discussion for the sake of the communities, because you've got people, although it's been talked about again and again, that's because it's a continuing concern, and so we need to bring these things forward and start working them over with a committee perhaps, including the communities, because the communities need, and all the stakeholders, that's the whole communities, need to be in on helping us figure out how we can be more efficient, handle things best financially, and at the same time, best for the students. And so I'm grateful that we're starting the discussion. How we started, we can keep working on.
So,
I think just to clarify, maybe next time a brief introduction of, what you're about to read is not something that we're going to vote on. A lot of people thought we were going to vote on this plan tonight, so maybe this is not a.
I didn't say that it was a voting document.
I understand, but it also didn't say that it wasn't necessarily. And if you're looking at it from the public's point of view, they may be like, well, they did. They were like, they're going to vote on restructuring the schools tonight, just because it's part of our packet and it's on the agenda and it looks official. So a brief, this is not an action item that is going to have immediate impact. This is in big, bold, red, something, letters, stamped, signed, sealed. Thanks. I know.
Can I just say that when I'm at work and when I'm working through a problem and I'm trying to figure out a solution, is I like to truly understand what the challenges and what the problems are. And for my own understanding, I don't quite understand. I don't feel like I have enough information on what we say there's inequitable experiences for our children in these different facilities. But what does that mean? Is that because of the facilities themselves? Is it because of the teachers there? Is it some other element that is contributing to that? I don't think that we were presented, or at least I don't feel like I have a good understanding of what the problems are that we actually need to fix. So I would like to know that. Not at this meeting necessarily, but down the road.
So do we move this forward with forming the committee or not?
Forming a committee? Yeah.
All those in favor of forming the committee? Just to overhaul?
Not for this plan, but to look at
Right,
the
right, this
situation.
issue.
Right now?
Is that? My thought is the budget is going to, I don't know how easy this budget's gonna be. I don't think any of us do. But
Well, it's over $1 million right now.
I think,
It's $1.3 million.
I hear you, Gary. I think.
So you always talk about the money. You want to keep spending $1.3 million, or you want to do something about it?
I'm Mr. Consolidation, but I live in Reedfield, so that's different because my kids don't have to travel to another town. In my thought, as far as having a big, massive Maranacook campus, and that doesn't even have to be something that's this year or next year. It's just, hey, as a district, can that be our goal? Can our goal be and it doesn't even have to be 50, could be 15 years from now, could be 20 years from now, I don't care. But is having a campus where all the kids in the district, from elementary up, could that be a goal? I think putting this in a budget, just with the budget, I just think that's going to be,
It's not for this year. It won't happen this year.
oh, I understand that. I'm just saying, it seems like we're just, that it comes down to the strategic plan that we have, where we're not allowed to talk about, during that whole process, we weren't allowed to talk about consolidation, which was ridiculous to me. And the idea that I think having, when we talk about the differences between educations that our kids from different towns get, I mean, it makes it sound a lot worse than it probably actually is, as far as also a tremendous amount of cost as having 4 elementary schools, some of them not very big, and just making sure that the people that support that are still willing to support that. The communities are still willing to put in the funds to support the 4 elementary schools. I would just like to, if we do start a committee, I'd like to maybe try to back it off until the budget is nearly done.
Yeah.
Gary, I just want to say that I think this has to be a slow process, and right now, we are just, we've got to really think about the budget, and that's our major goal right now.
Right.
I agree with what Adam said, that I think we could put this off a little bit, because I'm just afraid that we won't give either one of them the attention and the thoughtfulness that they need if we're doing both of these huge things at once. So I think we need to get through the budget, and then I think a committee is it's what we need to do.
So
but
we could
I think-
ask for people's names for a
We-
committee
Yep, yep.
and do it after the budget.
That's what I would like to see
Either after
happen.
the budget, or, we've got the other proficiency-based education conversations going, and that's a big
Right.
conversation that's going. I think I would leave it up to Jay and the other administrators as to a timeline for when it would be most appropriate to form this committee. I agree, it needs to be very broad-based, It's going to be very time-consuming. I agree that we need to have a facilitator to guide the process, so that we do get all of the input from all of the stakeholders. It's going to take some time, though.
Right.
I could see it taking, well, it took from
March to-
what?
It took about, it was
6
March
months?
2011, yeah. It was actually probably closer to 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Start to
next
finish.
year.
Yeah.
I think we have to go slow. We can't just, make a big decision and, I think it has to be really thoughtfully discussed and looked at, all the different ideas and
Yeah.
aspects.
And also, I think if people in the community want consolidation, the budget's gonna get started to get voted down. I mean, that's the driving emphasis for us to have to look at consolidation would be strictly, it would have to be financial. So as long as the budgets continue to pass, I don't know that, I just don't know if we have our feet held to the fire on that.
I think your feet's gonna be held to the fire this year.
So should we have a motion that before June, we want to, or that just to ask the chair to start
A committee.
coordinating with Jay on what the committee would be like and then present to us when it's recommended that it start and what its composition would be? Does that sound like a way we could go?
Yeah, that, I just caution you to think about June being a really hard time to start a committee going into the summer months.
Oh, yeah,
To be quite honest, I would say it would be more something you probably want to start in September. I think that way people are back, and people can then kind of make a commitment to be able to attend the meetings and be part of the discussions and such. And it's, again, there's a lot going on in our district right now, and even the fact of trying to generate a list of names and look for a facilitator to start that, that's going to detract from some of the other things that have to be done. I'm being honest, and it's going to take time.
It's going to take some time, and I think if we if we look at it starting for next September, October, then we would be in a good space.
And what we can do is just put this on the agenda so that the board, right at the beginning, endorses, okay, let's get this process started. We could do that in the month of either, September or October. That
So
might
it
be a better,
doesn't need a
just bring
motion?
it back at that time.
Does everybody feel okay with that? Is
I
that,
think we've given guidance.
What are we doing?
Okay, moving on. Anybody have any discussion on it, or any comments? Nope. The 5-year strategic plan. Review.
So you guys have it, it went out in your board packet. Remember there's 2 sections. The first section is more of a summarized, here's the big picture concepts, and then the second section of it is a more detailed, what are the specific steps we're doing, what are the timelines, who's responsible for it. This process started with the future search. Ryan Meserve published for us an executive summary, which was then used to help guide that. There was also an advisory board that gave input. This was shared with the staffs in all of the schools. So it's kind of out there at this point. So there's, it is a big document. There's a lot to look through. I agree with Kathy. There's a lot to look through and kind of digest there. But it's there, and in order to post it and make it an official document, we are going to need a vote. But again, it looks like that was not something that the board was willing to do tonight. So I will bring it back the next meeting, and we can have more discussion. I don't know if there's questions about it tonight that we can answer, or if you'd just rather wait and, I do realize it's getting late, so we might just want to save it for the very next.
So my discussion is on 3/7/18, we discussed the IA for the middle school.
Yep,
That was not even listed in the
yep.
strategic plan, but it appeared on the board. Also on the board was finances. And nowhere in your plan does it talk about the public's money and how that is to be utilized. When you look at the big graph, you will find it up in the left-hand corner, finances. Finances is not mentioned anywhere here. Somehow, the public wants a plan that they know that they have their interests at heart.
So in the strategic plan on the general page, page 8, it says conduct budgetary audits of our various district departments to identify, adjust, and maximize available resources of the district.
So that's
How is
my
that
letter,
not-
huh?
How is that not finances? That's the question I'm asking.
Yeah, but,
That's how we spend our money.
okay.
I'm just, like, is there something specific you want? If there's specific wording that you feel needs to be there, I'm certainly open to that, and we'll.
Well,
include
what
it
about
in the
this
plan.
item here?
So when you're looking at, and you're talking about the industrial arts program
Yeah,
at the middle school?
that was up on the big
I have
graph
not,
too.
I have not had one teacher ask for that at the middle school. I understand that's something that's coming from the board, but that has a tremendous impact in your middle school and what the work that's being done there. And the response that I got when I asked once about what the need was for middle school, it was to feed the high school program. There wasn't a explanation of why it's needed at the middle school.
There's adult ed classes that are available. There's other things in the community that are available if there's someone that really wants to do woodworking. I hope sometime, Gary, that the board can just have a vote, or just if there's any interest or anything like that, because I don't see the support in an IA program for the middle school from the community. But that's just me talking.
I am more concerned about the lack of, maybe not interest, but the lack of being able to support the program sufficiently at the middle school with the way with schedules and what needs to be taught already. Unless there's a formal proposal that comes to us from the principal, I don't think that we should be discussing the IA program at the middle school.
And I'll piggyback on that again because I can't shut up, but that's the way I think it should work. I think as a board, we need to stop bringing up, I think we just need to respond to our administration. I know that sounds like I just think that they need to come and give us, and we say yes or no, but I don't think the board generating ideas helps them do their job at all. I think we're giving our administration a ton of tasks to do, and they already have their plates full. So I just really think as a board, maybe we can start looking at not bringing up new crap. I mean, basically, they're the ones in the school every day. Let them bring it to us, and we will, I mean, we do what we do, which is yes or no. But I really think we're handicapping our administration and our teachers and our students if we keep spinning our wheels on things that they're not even bringing up to us.
Any other discussion? Meeting adjourned.